sorry.
Okay. I call to order this meeting of the AR Architectural Review Board for this Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Oh, roll call, sorry, yes.
Howard, Larson,
Here.
King,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
Potts.
Now can we stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have citizens time. Is there anybody that would like to address the Architectural Review Board that does not have an application or presentation for citizens time? Okay. Do we have any corrections or additions to the minutes from last meeting? Nope. Do I have a motion to approve?
Sure, I'll move that the ARB approve the minutes of January 19th, 2022 as presented.
All in favor?
Hmm?
All in favor?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry about that.
Okay. So let's go through our agenda items. First, we have the ZP 2022-0211 Haymarket Baptist Church and preschool signs.
Yes, so we're on packet page 4. So tonight we have before us Haymarket Baptist Church looking to replace their signs that are out front. If you're familiar with the property, these signs are definitely in need of replacement. So this is something that Luann is here tonight on behalf of the church and the preschool to discuss with the board. Looking at the signs that are presented, and that's going to be on packet page 10 and 11, and then the existing signs are on 12 and 13. But looking at the signs that are presented, they are in keeping with the guidelines and the zoning ordinance requirements. They meet the sign size, fonts, and the general design layout. The only question I think we had for the applicant is why they were going with the red color, as this was a new color introduced on the property. And so Ruth Ann, if you want to come up and address the board, if they have any other questions, they can certainly ask you, and vice versa if you have any questions for them. So I'll turn it over to the board if you have any questions.
That was the only question I had, just the design change. I live generally across the street, so I see it every day. So I think it'll be a nice addition. I happened to notice it on my walk this morning, so I can see in particular the school sign is definitely getting older. So what was the reasoning behind kind of the color change and the design change for the preschool sign?
That is the existing logo of the preschool.
Okay.
At least for the past 15, 17 years. I think the preschool's been there now for 33 years. But it is a bear with red. And so the school t-shirts are red. So we were keeping consistent with that.
It's the branding of the schools.
Just the brand.
And to remind the board, the red color is in keeping with our historic guidelines. It was more a question of curiosity on the color chosen. If the board wants to discuss any modifications of the sign, though, you can discuss that with the applicant.
And the new sign will go in the same spot that the old sign is in currently? Okay.
One of the questions I would have, the Baptist church sign, is that going to be backlit? Do you need it to be lit? Do you want the option to be lit? So,
The original sign that's there now was originally lit. There was electricity running through it, and you can see in the picture. When Streetscapes was done, 6, 7 years ago, when Holly was here, those lines were cut, and they were never replaced. So we don't need it lit, no. We were just looking to replace the sign.
only what I would offer, I don't think we would have an objection to it, but if it would help you to have that option in your application, then that saves you from having to come back through the.
We would like that opportunity, if that's okay.
Emily, has any issues with that?
If that is an addition, I would just ask that you pass it as an option so long as it is in accordance with the newly adopted zoning ordinance effective December 6th. Since we changed the ordinance, I don't know it off the top of my
Oh,
head.
can't do backlit.
So-
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to pull it up, but if you want to go ahead and make a motion, please just include that it needs to be in accordance with the newly adopted zoning ordinance from December 6th.
I apologize, no good deed, right? So you can cheat trust. Is this generally a higher and larger sign on both?
It's exactly the same.
Exactly the same. Okay. I had raised the question as well, just the colors. You have white on the building, black as a trim, blue awnings around the edge, just had a lot of colors. Whether or not that would create some, I wouldn't say visual clutter, but just a lot of competing colors. The branding makes sense. That is going to be aluminum on wood posts.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know this necessarily our discretion, but the two, just making sure, coordinate with Emily that when you place them, they're offset, so they don't block traffic, I guess, when you come out. I don't know if there's any issues with it now, with them being right in line with each other.
I don't think so.
I don't think we would have any objection with them blocking each other or anything else like that, so.
They're far enough apart. I know the school sign is a little bit further down, closer to the parking lot, and then this sign is kind of adjacent to, or much closer to the front door.
Again, the point being, if you needed flexibility to move them around for that, I think we would want to anticipate that. The Living Hope, is it Living Hope? Is it a church that's by El Vaquero? The way those tune signs are, if you're driving down the street, it looks like El Vaquero Living Church, like the two signs sort of go over, so anyway, that was the point. If the consensus of the board that they're not competing, having these different colors, then I don't have any objections to it.
Section 58-17.7, Section D allows for permanent internally illuminated signs are permitted for wall, freestanding, and channel letter signs in the gateway zone as marked on the signing map, and that they shall all comply, and then it references another section. So I can look into this more and provide the final answer, but this area is located in the core district, so what I would recommend is for lighting, it be something on the ground that shines up.
Do we have, sorry, Madam Chair, do we have standards for like light shielding and light
We
trespass?
do have
Okay.
standards for light shielding, so what I'll do is I can send over the document just stating in here that you can't shine light into traffic, it cannot go a certain distance beyond, so it would just be your light focused right on the sign, so as it does not conflict with traffic coming where it's located.
So a spotlight right in front, just shining up for the sign would be appropriate.
Yes, something that's at that ground level.
Do we want to say color to match the sign, color of the fixture? Do we care about the fixture?
I would recommend going with a dark bronze or a black, something that is not going to stand out.
We're not stuck on the red, if that's an issue. The bear itself is the logo, if you will, and we can do it in another color if that's the hindrance.
Reason why I offered that, so I was the zoning administrator when the Haymarket or Washington Street Realty sign went up. Blue roof, white paint, red sign. Heard a lot about that. So I didn't know this being set up, white building, blue awnings, red roof. That's the only reason why I brought it up. Would anyone have any objections to that sort of?
I would say I wouldn't have an objection. I have to be very honest, I didn't notice I didn't know the awnings were blue. And considering I walk past it every day,
They're subtle, they're further back. You have to drive
Yeah.
around or sort of be at an angle to be able to see it.
yeah, it's not, I mean, they're not front facing, so I wouldn't think there would be too much of a contrast.
Since I
Okay.
brought it up about the lighting, can you want to take a stab at the motion?
Would you like to take a stab at the
I'll
motion?
take a stab at it. Since I opened my mouth.
Yep.
Thank you for putting these together. I know this can be bureaucratically a pain, but I appreciate you doing this. So,
Well, if we get approval, we can get it on order, and they would be in by Easter.
oh, wow, cool. I move that the Board of Supervisors approve the COA ZP 2022.
Marcia, start over. Architectural Review Board, please.
What did I say?
Board of Supervisors.
I work for Loudoun County and I do a lot of motions. I apologize.
Duly noted.
Long day. I move the architecture, well, it says board here, that's what confused. See, that's in my defense. I move the Architecture Review Board approve COA ZP 2022-0211 for the new business signs at 14800 Washington Street, Haymarket Baptist Church and Preschool, as presented in the application, and as amended to allow the owner the option to install ground-mounted lighting in accordance with the zoning ordinance and of a color of either dark bronze or black.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next application, we're on packet page 14. So this is for a demolition application request for 2 structures. Each application is separate. I have included them in a combined report based on they are jointly owned by the same property owner, and the report addresses, the narrative that was sent in addresses both items here. So the structures are known as the Firehouse, which is located at 14941 Washington Street. And the second structure is the bungalow structure located at 6707 Jefferson Street. If you're familiar, the Firehouse sits on Washington Street. It sits a little bit off of the main roadway itself and has the look and feel of a firehouse. The bungalow structure sits along Jefferson Street. It is currently boarded up, and it does have a green metal roof that you may recognize as you drive by. It is south of the intersection. So the applicant's here tonight to discuss with us the demolition of the 2 structures for the property. They are listed currently in our comprehensive plan under the historic resources inventory. They are recognized as local historic resources to the town of Haymarket. So I've gone through and put together the report here, and I have called to attention the section for our zoning ordinance. You'll find that on packet page 18, the Old and Historic Haymarket District Overlay. And as you read through those items and you get further down, there is a discussion in there where I've given staff responses on the properties. Each response is divided up, and you'll have reference to the two. So I have put in here that the removal of either structure will definitely alter the landscaping of the town. This is something up for discussion with the Architectural Review Board for what it means in the long haul for our historic integrity of the site, and then any remaining on-site historic resources. I have also included in here a document that's been prepared from the Relic Library on the bungalow structure. I am following up with them on any documentation they may have for the firehouse structure, and I will pass that along as soon as we have more. Speaking from the time that I've been here, I have heard of the historic relevance that the firehouse structure has in the town, meaning that previously, before the firehouse was there, a structure sat, a home structure, and it was burned down, and in its place the community came together and found a need for a firehouse, and thus the volunteer firehouse was built. I have included that brief analysis here. I will work to find the documentation of that. We do have one oral history that was given to that and documented from one of the children that used to live in that structure when it burned down. Later on, that structure turned over to Prince William County Fire Department and was later put up for sale and sold. And then this application is a new application. However, a previous application was submitted in the 2017 timeframe for demolition of these structures, and ultimately that was not continued. I do believe that was denied and no longer pursued. So with that, I am going to turn it over. The applicant has prepared a presentation, so I'm going to turn it over to the applicant to present to the board, and then we'll open up a discussion. If you want to bring...
Technical difficulties with that cord.
Yep.
Is it okay if I come over here?
Yes.
Lovely.
Can the board see that okay, or would you guys like for us to turn the light off?
I can see.
Okay. No, you can leave that there. It's okay. If you want to sit beside the table, that's fine.
Good evening. Some of you know me, some of you may not know me. My name is Connor Leak. I am the broker for Z Properties LLC. First and foremost, this evening I know we don't have a full board here, so by no means am I expecting to have a decision made this evening. I know that these properties do hold near and dear to some hearts, and so we want to make sure that we have the full voice of the Architectural Review Board. Unless the board is able to make a decision this evening, then by no means will we obviously not stop you. I want to go through and give a brief overview. Emily did a phenomenal job, but I want to go in and talk about some of these properties, talk about a little bit about the history of the properties, as well as where we stand today, what kind of changes we've made since the owners have owned the property, and what we're looking to do in the near future with it. As Miss Emily stated earlier, the first structure is referred to as the bungalow, located at 6707 Jefferson Street. It was built in the 1920s. It's a two-story wood-framed building. It has a concrete rubble stone foundation. There's a partial cellar below the first floor. There's two one-story appendages attached to the exterior. It's roughly about 1,900 square feet, and it sits on an acre parcel. The second structure, as we know, is the old firehouse. The old firehouse was built in 4 phases. First one started there in 1946. The first portion of it is a 2-story structure. The back portions are 1 story. The big thing to note here, it's a hollow core CMU building. It does have pre-engineered wood roof trusses. It sits on a concrete slab. It's roughly about 7,500 square feet, and it sits on 0.2 acres. The back portion of it does run into the other acre parcel. History on the site. So in 1945, there were 2 structures that sat on this property. One of them had an oil-burning stove that caught fire and caused both the structures to unfortunately burn down. Due to one of those structures housing the telephone switchboard at that time, they were not able to actually call the firehouse in Manassas, which caused someone to have to get in a car and drive out there. Well, by the time that they responded, unfortunately, both those buildings were burnt down. So that's when it was stated, well, hey, we need to build a firehouse here on the western side of the county, since the nearest one was there in Manassas. The land was deeded shortly over in 1965 to the Gainesville Volunteer Fire Department. From that time, sometime, and I don't know the exact date, but somewhere I believe it's in the mid-'80s is when it stopped being in use as a firehouse. The Board of County Supervisors obviously dismantled the volunteer program there in the early 2010s. And so in 2011, it was deeded over to the Board of County Supervisors for their ownership. Then it was sold there in 2013 to Z Properties, who acquired the property. The property, again, had been vacant for probably roughly about 25 years. From the research that I could tell and the news papers that I was able to read, it pretty much looked like it was just going and being deteriorated. I know Station 4 was built in 1940. Station 4 is down 55. And then Evergreen Firehouse up north on 15 was built in 82. That's why I'm coming up with, I believe it was that mid-'80s. Marchant may be able to give us a little more insight on that. From there, in 2013, the one piece of quote history that I know was part of it was there was a time capsule that was opened up that they built the structure around in the 1946 when they built it. And I believe those artifacts are in the town museum. From what was in there, a couple items was a newspaper article from the Manassas Messenger. There was some nickels. There was a list of the Gainesville District volunteers. Everyone who was on that was put in there. And I believe there was every child in the town under the age of 15, I believe, was listed in that as well. And all of that was located in there. The sticky subject, the hard subject to talk about is always what makes a resource historic. There's nothing in regards to the Prince William County, state, or federal historic resources. We're not saying that doesn't mean that it's not historic to the town. We understand that the town measures by different metrics than the state, the local, and federal agencies, and we respect that. But we just wanted to make sure to notate that we could not find anything. I believe Emily mentioned in her report as well, still looking, but we haven't located anything on that side to where it was deemed a historic place or event happened that would meet the metrics of a county, state, or federal resource list. The current conditions of the bungalow, obviously you have an engineer's report in front of you. The engineer's report goes in much more depth and detail than what this slide shows here. There's 8 or 9 points on that engineer's report, but I wanted to make sure I at least list them out for folks who are watching at home or here in the audience this evening. Big things is the foundations. Obviously, as we always know, you can't build anything unless it's on a strong foundation. This foundation is, cracking and deteriorating in multiple areas. One of the recommendations from the engineer is actually the need to pick this building up and re-pour a new foundation. Don't know if any of you have picked up a building and moved it. One of my companies has. It's not very easy. It's anywhere from about $35,000 to $50,000, and we only moved the building about less than a mile, about a quarter of a mile, if that. Not easy to pick them up. A lot of risk in picking them up to the structural integrity of the building. There's large voids in the foundation wall that support the floor joists. Termite infestation on the floor joists and floor sheathing boards. There's rotted roof sheathings and roof rafters. The metal roof, as you can probably see, has peeled back in different areas, and the siding requires complete removal and replacements. Again, I urge you to look at the full comprehensive list within the packet itself. Regarding the firehouse, we have a lot of rotted and cracked roof trusses. One of the big issues is when Z Properties purchased this back in 2013, there was already holes in the roof, there was holes in the gables, and so weather had already been penetrating onto these sheathing boards and trusses and roof, which unfortunately caused the deterioration over the longevity that the Gainesville the Gainesville Volunteer Fire Department owned the property, as well as the 2 years that the county owned it. There was just unfortunately no upkeep to it. The property has been hit a couple times with Virginia State Maintenance Code violations, which have all been remedied through Mr. Brian Sonnenberg with the county. So there's no current violations on either of the structures at this time. We have rotted wood lintels that need to be replaced with now steel lintels. You have rotted and broken wood beams and posts throughout. You have, again, mentioned several holes in the roof and gables that we currently patch to make sure that they did not deteriorate any further. So the big thing is, hey, you're wanting to demo it. Did you think about what alternatives you had? Because obviously the first thing, the easiest choice is always saying, hey, let's demo the building. It's the easiest solution. Start from scratch. But it's not always the right solution. And the town has proven over time with certain buildings and certain buildings that were in certain conditions that it is viable to save. A company that I work for, Haymarket Properties Group, we've saved 2 buildings in town. One of them was being condemned by the county, the old Pace West School building, and was able to renovate that, as well as the Sears home that is now sitting as Cookies and Cream. Luckily, we were able to get to those buildings before they got to the condition that would cause them not to be able to have a reasonable ROI, or what I always call pass the laugh test. Does it make common sense, or does it make sense to actually put the money into the structure to make it work? And that's how I consider the laugh test. And at those times, those buildings were. The town itself has saved buildings. We have the old post office, which is now Washington Street Realty, and the mayor's house. What is it? Hullfish House. Thank you. Which is now Cupcake Heaven. And obviously, those buildings we were able to get to prior to them deteriorating to a condition that were not going to be suitable or livable in. So the first thing that we say is, hey, can we relocate it? Can we pick it up and move it? Well, the firehouse is feasibly impossible to pick up and move, mainly because it's a CMU building sitting on a concrete slab foundation. Just not doable. The bungalow, could it be done? Sure. I think that you can always put enough money towards something and make it happen. The question is, would it be safe and would it collapse? And that's to where it's a little cautious. Notating back to when I mentioned that we had some violations for the Virginia State Maintenance Code, we brought out the county to talk us and walk us through it and to show us, hey, what do we needed to fix, X, Y, and Z. And as we walked through the property, we went to the bungalow and we started to walk on the inside of there. And he stopped everybody from walking in, and he goes, yeah, no, one person at a time, and go in at your own risk, pretty much. The bungalow is unfortunately in bad conditions, mainly due to the fact that it sits on that concrete rubble foundation, and those floor joists are so compromised due to the termites that are in there that you pretty much step through. We were able to safely walk through the firehouse due to that being on a concrete slab while wearing hard hats and safety gear while going through it. But you could possibly pick up the bungalow and move it, but you do take the risk that it would collapse. Again, you're talking anywhere from $35,000 to $50,000 just to pick it up and move it up to about a quarter mile, half mile. So it's where in town could we relocate it to? Who would be willing to take on that expense and that risk? And then after you moved it and poured a new foundation, you're still talking probably somewhere around, depending on the market, depending on inflation, $150 to $200 per square foot to be able to get it up into current building codes, and at the end of the day, something that could be habitable or do a business out of. So then it comes to repair and reuse. How can we repair it? How can we reuse it? And this is where I think that we'll have a great discussion on. I think we're going to have a healthy discussion on, and it's how do you repair or reuse a building that doesn't pass what I consider the laugh test. Again, anybody, if you wrote a blank check, you could fix anything. You could build anything if you had a blank check. But it comes down to what are the metrics that you determine this by, and at what point does an ROI, return on investment, make sense or not make sense. And at the end of the day, it's really those banks that determine that in regards to getting funding for it. Obviously, you can pay cash for anything, and it's always dealing with those. You hear a realtor tell you all the time with your house, it's, hey, yeah, you can build that, you can do that to your backyard, but you're never going to get your money back on it. But it's one of those things to where it's just we're almost in this situation. It's to the point to where, due to the condition, the structural integrity as outlined within the engineer's reports, that it's not feasible. It doesn't pass the laugh test. It's not economically smart to invest the large lump sum necessary to be able to renovate this building to get it up and going. The other issue that you have on there is the parking. As we know, this lot sits on 1.2 acres. You have about a little over 9,500 square feet with the two properties together. Depending on the use, obviously parking is dependent on what type of business use you do. So for a restaurant in the town, you have to park one spot per every 100 square feet you have. If you have a retail use, you have to park one spot per every 250 square feet. And for office, you have to park one per every 300 square feet. So if we looked at it and we said, okay, if we were if we turned it into what the owners want to turn it into, which is some sort of wine bar, cafe, restaurant, pastry shop, something along those lines, that was the original intention, you're needing a great amount of square footage, pretty much 75 parking spots on just the firehouse side. If you're looking at something more along the lines of an office use, which the market doesn't call for right now, as we know we're going through COVID. In that instance, that office use you're talking about probably in the mid-30s. From my calculations, and by no means am I a civil engineer or am I trying to pass myself off as a civil engineer, you could probably comfortably fit 30 parking spaces on there. Remember, we got to take into consideration setbacks. You got to be able to have turntables. You have to be able to get a fire apparatus throughout there. You have to have your landscaping, your buffers, so on and so forth. So I think comfortably you could probably fit 30, but it has not gone in front of a civil engineer. We had one go back in 2017 and do it, and saving and expanding both sites, and we got down to about 17, 18 parking spots after we were able to keep everything and move things around. So those are some of the limiting factors that we have on there. And when we looked at the alternatives of demo. We've also, again, I'm a commercial broker by day. I've spoken with prospect buyers who've been interested over the years in coming and seeing the property. I haven't had one that said, yes, let me put a contract in on that, because as soon as you walk in, everybody understands the amount of cash that's going to be necessary to get the thing up to code. A lot of issues that you have with that, and again, we're going to work our way bottom up, is talking about the firehouse. Concrete slab foundation, solid. It's good, no issues. But we have hollow core CMU. So you have three types of concrete blocks. You have one which means hollow, which means it's 50% of it is open, 50% of it is the brick. The next one you have is solid, which means you got 25% open. The rest of it is the brick, and then you have a solid, which is just a straight solid concrete block. If you're utilizing hollow core, you're usually reinforcing it with rebar and filling it with either mortar or filling it with concrete itself. The reason why you use hollow is because it's much cheaper and it's much easier to lift and build a building with it. back when they built this probably in the 40s, that was probably one of the easiest things for them to be able to do, and that's why they did it. But this is hollow core, has no rebar backing in there. It's not filled with anything, and so the lifespan on it is unfortunately not there compared to where if they would have done solid CMU bricks. From there, we're having to repair the roof, pretty much redo the entire roof, repair roof trusses, pulling that all off. This currently is not on county water or county sewer, which means you're going to have to pay a tap fee. For the firehouse, a 1-inch line just for the tap fee is probably going to be around $65,000, roughly speaking, and that doesn't include labor. That's just paying the county to come in and say, hey, can I please use your water and sewer? So as we go through this, we look at the variables and the limitations that we have to the structure as we move forward. We're here in front of you requesting the 2 certificate of appropriateness on both structures. The big thing I think that would be a win-win for both Z Properties and the ARB is to work hand in hand to design and redevelop a site into a structure that would be cherished by the town and remembered for decades to come. I know some of the facts is, hey, you're tearing down what is considered a historic resource, and one of my rebuttals to it is, why don't we build something that can be remembered 100 years from now or 50 years from now, and people will look back and say, hey, that I remember when, and so on and so forth. Whether we went in and we remembered the property by maybe laying out in brass the outline of the old firehouse so people could look down and say, hey, what is that? Oh, well, let me tell you the story. That's where the old firehouse was, and this is what happened to it, so on and so forth. Or whether we tried to take the architectural design into play and brought in an A-shaped or a pitch roof, A-shaped frame pitch roof, or brought in garage doors on the front to try to welcome and remember that firehouse. I think that's to where the ARB and Z Properties can work hand in hand to design a beautiful building and a beautiful structure that will be remembered for decades to come. I talked a little bit about how we think we can incorporate the history into the site with the ARB. You all passed a new zoning ordinance. When I say that, I mean the town did under section 58-16.12. There's Emily mentions and has some comments within the report on these. I wanted to give my opinion on them as well as we walk through them. For the folks listening at home, I'll read the outline and then we'll get that answered there. So the first one is how the demolition or removal of a historic resource from the property on which it is located will impact the historical integrity of the site and any remaining on-site historical resources on the same property. And again, we're confident that if a COA is granted by the ARB, that the ARB and Z Properties will be able to work together to design a structure that will preserve the story, outline, and architectural features of the previous firehouse. We understand that it holds dear to some hearts, and we want to be able to remember that by incorporating features into the new structure when that comes about. And of course, any sort of outside features has to come in front of the ARB based off your all's guidelines. And so that's where we would look to work with you all hand in hand, brainstorming what makes sense, how can we incorporate the different features. How the loss of the historic resource will impact the historical integrity of any adjacent historic properties. So by allowing the demo of the 2 structures, it will actually help promote the general welfare by increasing the real estate values, generating new business, creating new jobs, making the town a more attractive and desired place in which to live and visit. I think a living proof of that is what is going on across the street. You had some older homes that were neglected, weren't utilized, and pretty much came to a deteriorating factor that were granted by the ARB to be able to demo. And at that point, we now have a beautiful brick resource that's going to draw folks into the town, that's going to help the small businesses in the town, And that's what we feel like we can do at this site. We feel like we can be one of those secondary uses, whether it be a restaurant, whether it be a wine bar, a cafe, something along those lines that we can give to the community and give a resource that would be great for them. The impact the loss of a historic resource will have on the overall integrity to any historic district the historic resource is located in. So it will deplete two structures. We're not going to sit here and lie. I'm not going to try to tell you that it's not important. It was put on that list for a reason, and that's why it's there. This comes back to my earlier point to where, yes, it will deplete two structures from the district resource, but it will add a new harmonious design structure that will thrive for decades to come and one day be considered itself a historic structure and folks to be able to look back on and be able to build on. The ability of the historic resource to adaptively be reused as part of a new on-site development, which would not adversely impact the historic resource ability to convey its historic significance through its integrity of location, setting, feeling, association, design, materials, and workmanship. So there are multiple limiting factors that allow the reuse of these structures. I talked about them earlier. I'm not going to bore them with you again. But mainly it's that structural integrity of the structures has been compromised. And unfortunately, it's well before Z Properties purchased it. Again, this property sat vacant for almost 25 years, had holes in its roof, so on and so forth. When the owners purchased it, they went in and they made some of the corrections that they needed. Not all of them. That's why we got hit with the Virginia Maintenance Code, and we came in and we quickly fixed those from there to be able to stop any more deterioration happening. The financial contribution required to attempt to bring these structures up to code vastly outweighs the final product, in my opinion. Again, I've done this on two structures that we saved in the town, and I can tell you that it's not there. Also, as mentioned in the report, the parking requirements would not be able to be met with the current footprints of the building. And lastly, letter E, whether any monies or assistance for preservation of the historic resource could be made available to the property owners within 180 days of the owner's request to demolish or remove it. This one, there's currently no grants available. I believe the town is currently going through their budget season, so I'm not sure if it is forecasted for any grants to be put in there. I don't know if that's come up in any work sessions. But on the side, if there is grants available, we'd be happy to sit down and listen and understand what funds are made available. Unfortunately, 10, 15, 30,000 is not going to move the needle due to the vast rehab that is necessary with tapping into water and sewer, building out bathrooms, redoing roofs, redoing support beams, load-bearing walls, filling in CMU, pretty much rebuilding the bungalow. But if there is a large number that is available via grants that the town's willing to make available, well, we can have that conversation. But unfortunately, based off my experience from a real estate broker, owning a construction company, as well as rehabbing two buildings, I don't think that it's going to be there personally, and that's just based off my previous experience. At that, this ends my presentation, and I open discussion with you all. If you have questions, I'd love to get them answered. I'd love to set up a site tour for you all to be able to look at it yourself and be able to see what the engineer is referencing in his report and where it actually is in the building, and being able to get a sense and understanding. I know it's hard just looking at it from the outside. That's why, again, we're in no rush to get an answer this evening. I welcome whether we do a tour on your next meeting, whether we have a special meeting, or even if you all want to come one-on-one or by two, I'm open to that as well, for you all to come and look at the property, ask questions. But I yield my time back to you all. I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening and walk you through our case. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
I have some questions, so I can start.
Yes, ma'am.
So, what was the intention when the purchase was made originally? Like, and if that was made in 2013 and the property was already in disrepair, what was the intention at that time to do with the property? Kind of knowing that it was already in this state of disrepair.
Yes, ma'am. We had a short feasibility period on it when the property owners purchased it. So all the tests that we were looking to be able to complete, we were not able to do so due to the short turnaround. What happened was when a government goes to sell a building, they pretty much go out for bid or for you to put in a proposal to be able to do it, whether it be via sealed bid or open bid. And when the owner Z Properties put in their application, they were originally intending to be able to utilize one of their other businesses in there and making it a wine bar cafe type environment. At the same time, it sucks because Virginia is a buyer beware state, which means it's always on the buyer to do their due diligence. The buyers were not fully under the understanding that, hey, that this property is a historic resource and is a historic property within the town, and did not know that there were going to be these many limiting factors. The overall goal was going to try to be able to rehab it, but understanding that it may not be rehabable based off of bids that were coming in. Obviously, with the scale of a building to this size, you can't get in as many bids as you'd like in a short feasibility time period. And so due to that limiting factor with purchasing it from a government agency, we unfortunately were not able to do everything, and because of such, we're kind of in the predicament that we're in now.
So, and I'm definitely the kind of zoning, all things land novice. That's not my area of expertise, but so forgive me for asking some of these questions. What is the duration, or what was the option to do that feasibility study? So if they bought it in 2013, how long did they have to determine that it was not feasible to do whatever they chose to do with it?
The property went under contract, I believe it was late September of 2013 and closed in December of 2013. So that feasibility period in commercial real estate, what a feasibility period is it pretty much allows you to come in and do whatever tests you want, try to get back as many bids as you can, talk with your civil engineers, your architects, talk with the municipality over zoning, and try to understand what limiting factors is it possible to be able to purchase this and move forward. Per se, some of the right questions were not asked at that time by the owner. And it was pretty much at that time when you go in and you do a bid with the municipality, there's no such thing as renegotiation after the fact. Because they're saying, hey, do you want it, or I'm going to give it to the next person. And so under contract, limited time on the feasibility period to be able to perform it, not being able to get back all the bids and looking at everything that we needed to. And that unfortunately was the limiting factors to what it is today. Again, we've tried to look at it to be able to rehab it, to reutilize it, and unfortunately just over the time it's not been there to be able to do so.
And I know, I guess somebody mentioned that it was, there was an application for demolition in 2017, and that was denied. Why was it denied at that time?
It was not denied, ma'am. It was denied by the ARB, and then it was appealed to the town council. And then at that point, I believe it just ran out. I believe there was, I don't know if it would be a sunset clause on a COA application, but there was no final determination. There was one meeting where I was actually a part of council at that time, and their attorney came in. I believe I don't think Mr. Schneider was the town planner at that time. And we pretty much recessed it, and it just never came back to the dais, and I believe it died out. So I apologize. It did get denied at the ARB level, but when it was appealed to the town council level, no determination was made on the appeal.
Okay. And I know you talked a bit about the cost. It's not financially feasible to rehab it. The parking's not there. So what is the intention if the COAs are granted and it's demolished? Then what is the intention for the property? How do you remedy? What is the financial obligation? Is it to sell the property and have someone else redevelop it or put something on that property? How do you remedy the parking issue that's there and the cost that it's going to the cost that's there to demolish and then rebuild something, does that outweigh what it would be to rehab the properties?
No, ma'am. So you're probably speaking, and I'm going to give you a large square footage base price just based off of current market conditions, and obviously, construction costs are through the roof with COVID. And are they going to stay that high? Probably not.
Right.
So to be realistic, so that's why I'm going to give you a range. It's probably going to be somewhere right now. If my construction company were to go bid on this, we'd probably be somewhere between 140 to 190 per square foot to be able to get this up and rehabbed. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower. Really just depends on what the overall scope is of the deal, as well as what is the end use. If someone's telling me, hey, I need to put in mahogany floor or mahogany walls and marble floors, obviously we're going to be well over 200. If you're telling me, Connor, put in builder grade carpet or just leave it a polished concrete, okay, we're a little bit cheaper, but you have those major aspects, which is the foundation, the walls, the roof, the tap fees, the bathrooms that have to be put in, the HVAC system. Some of those main core things are not going to really range it. It's really those final touches that's going to determine if we're well over 200 or if we're down at the 150 per square foot. From there, your other question was, Connor, what is it to go and just demo it, and does that outweigh the cost? So to demo both those buildings, there was an asbestos report submitted back in 2017. So we have to do some asbestos remediation while we demo that, which it means pretty much you have to have a garden hose out there, well, much larger than a garden hose, but you have to have a tanker truck out there keeping everything wet so nothing gets airborne. And demo that, you're probably talking probably $150,000, $150,000 probably to demo both structures and get it removed off the property. From there, to be able to fix the parking requirement, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to decrease the footprint of the building, so make it much smaller. Obviously, I think ideally it's bring it up onto Washington Street. I believe the future, the outlook of this council is to continue to keep Haymarket a beautiful walking town, and so I think to do that, you got to get the property up on Washington Street as it almost is now. So bring that footprint up on Washington Street, put the parking in the back. Obviously, we're going to have a little bit of an issue with VDOT because we're probably only going to have a right-hand turn in and a right-hand turn out onto Jefferson Street. And how's that going to look and outplay? I am not a civil engineer, nor am I going to try to be one. But I'm going to say it's going to be a little tricky. But most likely, I think to pass the LAF test, it's probably going to be on Jefferson Street, the ingress, egress, and it's probably going to be on the further back portion there. The other option is you could go below ground. It'd be tough to go to below ground right now to fix it due to the location of the two facilities. The structural engineering that would have to go behind that is going to be outrageous. Also, to go below ground, you're talking anywhere from about 20 to 25,000 per parking space, just per parking space to build an underground structure. And the limiting factors due to the current footprint of what it is today. Or what I've been saying the town needs is a parking lot. We need a municipal parking lot. So even if we demoed it all and asphalted it and sold it to the town or put a check meter up there, I think to be able to keep that walking town feel, we need to put a centrally located parking lot to allow folks to be able to walk around to the shops and whatnot. But I know the owners want to keep it. By no means do they want to develop it and sell it off. They've kept it in the family for this long. They're family owned. This is not some large development company. This is a small family owned folks who live here locally, who own local businesses here, and they want to bring one of their local businesses to the town and be able to put in a wine bar and be able to put in a cafe, and that's ultimately the goal. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. If you came to me tomorrow and said, Connor, I'm going to buy it for $3 million, and if I sent that offer to them, they may take it. I think as any of us would if we were in that position. But at the end of the day, they have no intentions to sell it. It is their intention to be able to redevelop the property and be able to build upon it.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you putting the effort into it, Connor, to make the presentation. It's good to have material with which to be able to review and comment on. Some of these questions you've already answered, but I'll highlight just because I've had them as well. So the owners have not offered or solicited parties that would be able to take on such a project on either one? I know, Haymarket Coffee, I don't know that they have the ability to do it, but we have small businesses that are trying to get into town.
I walked the space with Chris and them, and they laughed at it when they went in. They said, "How am I going to put roasters in here?"
So what, the firehouse or the bungalow?
The firehouse, sir.
Okay. We've seen a significant increase in property values of late. You've had success at QBE with the sweat equity options. None of those would offset some of the rehabilitation costs of either one or both of those structures?
It would, sir. I mean, the reason why, the two reasons why you mentioned QBE, that QBE was able to be done the way it was one, we got it right after the county pretty much let it go. And, I mean, we pumped $3-4 million into it to get it to where it is. But we pumped $3-4 million into it with sweat equity because we owned the construction company that was able to do it. So I'm able to do it at cost. If I'm bringing in a GC to do it, that GC is going to be charging me 50% above his cost to be able to do it. So this family does not own a construction company. If you're volunteering your time, I will tell them, and me and you can go there, swing hammers, and knock it out. But unfortunately, the way we were able to do ours was because we owned the construction company, and we got it before it got into the condition that these are. The reason the town was able to do theirs was because the town acted as their GC, if you recall. The town was the one who ordered the materials and paid day labor to come in and do their buildings. That's how you're able to save it at that cost. But you have to be the GC, and the town took that risk on. And so, obviously, nowadays, with turning everything over to the county and the permitting process and how much more stringent the county is, there's no way that that would fly or pass the lab test today.
I'm sorry, I'm getting texted by my children. No, the point of what I was asking was that has the applicant made any attempt, or the owners made any attempt to offer that ability, either through trade for sweat equity or any other options to try to offset the labor costs and material costs?
So give me an example. I apologize.
So in Middleburg, we did a public-private partnership with, and I realized government was an entity, but the gentleman that entered into that partnership was a contractor who wanted to operate his office, let's say, as one example. And so he was able to use his background and expertise to lower his overhead to be able to do it, and was able to use that building in the end for a very low rent and cost. Here, similar situation too, where you get someone in that comes in that says, hey, I have the resources, or I have the time or the sweat equity to be able to, reuse one or both buildings. Let's figure it out. Let's make a deal. What's the point I was saying? Was there any sort of solicitation that might be interested, that might want to take on such a project and help figure out how to make it viable? Again, with the increase in values that we're seeing and other values increasing.
I can tell you that the increase in value, sir, is because you allowed the demolition of those buildings across the street.
Yeah, and we got fairgrounds and all that stuff.
And because of that allowed this to be able to, your property values are going to continue to skyrocket. The town's going to be sitting on a gold mine on this facility right here itself. That's how the property values increase, not just because of inflation or because we have a tendency to have a 3 to 5% increase year over year. It's because you're able to rehab the downtown area. When you remove eyesores, if we could remove Lane Motors, if we could remove the firehouse, if we could allow these redevelopments, you're going to see a much stronger market within the town of Haymarket. And the people already want to live in the town, and that's the beautiful part. But it's going to even drive it even higher to where you have that necessity and need at. In regards to the public-private partnerships, or was anything solicited, I run a brokerage of about 900 agents under me for my commercial real estate. From there, I also have the construction company. I've talked with my different subs. I've talked with my agents that are under me over at Pearson Smith Realty to get out and talk to their networks to see if anybody would be interested in, just as I talk about Lane Motors, and just as I talk about Miss Dottie's house and my property and Melodon. And unfortunately, no, sir, nobody has come up to the table to want to enter into that sort of agreement
But
decide to go.
aren't we, I mean, part of the unique character of the town is the historic nature in some of these buildings that we have, and it is a shame. I've lived here almost 20 years, so to me, it's very sad to see all of these buildings just, go into such disrepair and be neglected, and then the only answer is to demolish them and put up a new building that doesn't have the historic value or charm. And it would be great if you can build something that looks like the firehouse, but if that's the first firehouse that we had in Prince William County, there is some value to that. And, there are some things that add value, but as a town resident, I find what's going on here to be detracting to, I don't know that I would want my child walking up here when you have like the ingress and egress off of 66, and this going to be a rest stop for people coming off 66. So it takes away, this end of town takes away from, the charming historic nature of the town. It just does. And so I understand, because it is an eyesore. I mean, I hate looking at it. The buildings that are chained up or where, they're just falling down, it's a detraction. But at what point do we, if we keep allowing this, we're kind of in between a rock and a hard place, because you don't want it to look bad, but you also then are just destroying the historic nature of the town by allowing that to happen.
Yes, ma'am. And by no means would I ever tell you that's not a historic resource, because I think based off everybody, we could pull everybody in this room and everybody would have a difference of opinion. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that we all have that ability to have that opinion on what it is. So by no means am I trying to tell you that it is not important to this board or anything along those lines. What I'm stating is my expertise within my fields and what I and the companies I've worked for have done in the town, and what I've seen the town do, and do I personally feel, and again, it's my opinion, doesn't mean my opinion is correct by any means, but do I personally think it's able to be done to that property? And my personal opinion is no.
I guess two things. We do have a definition of what's historic. It is not a subjective standard. The policies, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, do state that a property does not either have a state or national register to be designated a historic district. So I would disagree that it is a subjective, whether it's national, state, or federal. I think the policy and the definitions are pretty clear. I guess going back to my other question, the owners have or have not offered or put it out on the market for folks to come in and look at reusing the property.
So there's no such thing as putting it out on the market?
Not putting it on the market. Let me give you another example, Connor. So with Washington Street Realty, as soon as we touched that building, we had people quickly calling saying, I would like that space. And we've had them rent it. All the buildings in town that have been adaptively reused from a significant condition have quickly been filled and been consistently filled since then. So it was just sort of a simple question. I didn't mean to go off and do some of these other ones. But just, did they look at offering it out or putting it out there to say, hey, we have a building, we're looking at renting this building, kind of like an RFP. Have they gone out and said, hey, is there anyone interested in doing that or not?
My clients don't have that network to do so. They've done it through me. So I don't know if that answers your question,
Yeah, it does.
sir.
Okay.
But they've done it through me and through my vast network. Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. The answer's probably no, but would the owner look into partnerships of reusing either a public-private partnership or some other avenue with which to reuse either structure, if fiscally viable?
Yes, sir. I don't think I want to take it off the table. If you came to me and you said, Connor, you're absolutely wrong, your numbers are wrong, let me show you how it's correct, I think that we would love to have a sit down and you prove and show me how that's possible, and I think that they'd be open to that conversation. It's just due to the fact of the numerous folks that we've talked to and the other bids that we've got in and got back, it's not possible from the resources and the data that we've been returned.
Parking issues, this doesn't mean to sound flippant, but it would seem you could remove the rear ends of the firehouse to be able to solve the parking issue. But you mentioned in there about the parking. What other zoning or barriers to development have you experienced? We just amended the zoning ordinance. So have you thought of any amendments that might allow a recouping of the cost, whether larger floor area, lower parking standard, lesser setbacks? Have you looked at any, it's probably independent of this group, but have you looked at ways to increase valuing the property through any sort of amendment or some other zoning ordinance change.
We've had high-level conversations with civil engineers regarding the matter. With the town, I've requested the new zoning ordinance from Emily and sent it off to our different civil engineers working on different projects in town. And so it's reviewing, getting adaptive and understanding the changes. Obviously, one of the limiting changes that we were thinking was going underground with parking, but we would be able to go up 4 stories, 50 feet in the B1, and now that's 3 stories, 35 feet. So that limits the ROI on it being able to readapt and reuse the current structures if we were able to structurally or find a private public partnership to be able to do so.
It's unfortunate we're not in a position, or we don't necessarily have the tools available, but there's historic districts across the nation that successfully reuse buildings and make them a significant return on investment. It doesn't sound like we necessarily have the tools right now to do that. Have you looked at, on the parking issue, one of the things I had wanted to follow up with you and the landowners about as a council member is looking at some way to alley those lots that front Washington Street between Jefferson and Madison. If that would solve and allow you to build to the street, there's an easement right by the firehouse. Again, that's somewhat independent of this discussion, but I do think there's some opportunities to look at how to benefit either through a shared parking program or some sort of other sort of thing. So would look forward to having that sidebar discussion with you. So you talk about working with the ARB to be able to redevelop the site with attractive architecture. Obviously, we're not allowed to condition that as a part of this. Much like this hotel said, where they had to do the brick was very expensive. Do you see any barriers to rebuilding some of these buildings that would have some of the architectural details that we see on the bungalow, or trying to recreate the original 4 squares of the firehouse? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's wood, it's not brick. I don't think if we were to recreate that, it wouldn't be wood, but it would have some of the fenestrations, some of the roofing and some others. Do you see a market for an adaptive or a new structure on that property that could reasonably incorporate the architecture features? Does that make sense?
I think so. I think we're going to soon see a market correction. And when that market correction happens, I think that construction prices are going to drop. And we're going to be able to get back down to reasonable rates on that, as well as supply chain issues. So obviously, we're limited by what's in the market today, but the beautiful thing is that we're not building tomorrow. The beautiful thing is that we're going to continue this discussion, work hand in hand to find a solution. And I don't see that being a limiting factor. Obviously, it was expensive, but it was well worth it. I think that we can all state that it looks good, and I think that's what the property owners, Z Properties, want to do. They want to work with the ARB. They want to be able to come in and not just say, hey, this is what I want to do, let me do this. It's hey, having those brainstormings, having work sessions, saying, hey, what do you all think? This is our concept that we want to do. And by no means are any of us in this room an architect, but we can have that general high-level conversation of saying, hey, I think it would be cool if you incorporated this feature here. I don't believe there's the ability, again, I'm not an architect, to incorporate both the bungalow and the firehouse. I think the bungalow holds more of a historic factor. So I think that the property owners would be open to trying to reflect that firehouse within their redevelopment. I think one of the no-brainers is the outline on the floor. I think that's a no-brainer, no matter what, being able to show what the outline is, because I think that's really going to generate the discussion when someone's in there and they're saying, hey, what is that? Why does that line go this way, that way? And it's, oh, hey, let me tell you the story about it. And you walk in and you have a mini history lesson, whether it be us hanging up photos, artifacts, documentation about it. I know one of the things that they've talked about is incorporating large garage doors into it to be able to have that firehouse feel. So the owners want to be able to work with ARB on a positive friendship and relationship, and understand that it's not going to be something that if you all did grant the COA, that we are going to come up with a design in 30 days. Obviously, it's going to be bringing in an architect to sit down, have work sessions, have brainstorming, and be able to come up with a concept that ultimately blends well with the town. And I think one of the no-brainers is that of brick, as we see brick coming down through all the way to the old bank building currently.
There's policies on brick that kind of an overuse of that. I think the idea, one correction, Connor, it was not a suggestion that you build a single building that looks like the bungalow and the firehouse.
Okay.
The idea would be the Washington Street facade would recreate that and then build to the street on Jefferson with a structure that replicates that. We have done a lot of brick. I don't know that's necessarily our background. A lot of it is wood. A lot of it is the cinder block. So that's a cost-saving measure, maybe to offer to your thing. So parking, all those sorts of things, I think there's other work to do beyond just this application to make these sites viable. Any issue with doing photo documentation, architectural descriptions, more so than what you've already had to account for the background or history?
No, sir. We'd be happy to hire a professional company to come in and do so, or work with,
Okay.
I believe, Miss Vice Mayor Edwards worked with somebody out of a college who came up and did some for this other property. And whatever the town wants on that side, the owners would be very open to, because we understand that you want to be able to remember.
Yeah, I think we need to follow the same steps that we followed with the Bean House and just in further evaluation.
Recycling, any objection to harvesting of materials?
No, sir.
Okay. Just a matter of where you store them, I guess. As I said, Connor did a good job of presenting a lot of my questions were answered by your presentation. Going back to questions for, sorry, thank you for indulging me. Going back to questions for staff. This is the first application of the new ordinance. I think it does do a good job of giving us some tools. We do have 60 days to look at that. So I was going to suggest that we, similarly to the Beans, visit the property maybe before the meeting next month. That would be helpful just to be able to get eyes on it and say we've looked at it. I would be interested, just for architectural curiosity, looking in the porch. Much like the whole fish house, it's a beautiful porch in there, and so might be some architectural features with which to document. If we could, I'm sorry.
Well, I think that is important to document, because if the applications were granted, you know, and the next step would be looking about what would go there, I think those are important things to take into consideration.
One of the things we used to do in Middleburg, we had pictures of all the historic buildings in town, and in the ARB, we would say, well, you know, what do you recommend in terms of an architecture? And we'd be able to point and say, you know, like that, kind of like that one right over there. I guess in the next submission or next iteration, assuming we come back, Emily, if you could include chapter 1.5, historic resources. And with that, it talks a little bit more about our designations. I do appreciate the research on the relic research on the bungalow. If there is additional expansive research, if the ARB is okay with that, finishing that discussion.
I think one thing we were trying to find is the VDHR report. When they came in to do the overpass, we were trying to locate it, but I don't think neither of us have been successful in seeing if they documented both.
The
of those.
firehouse?
Yeah, but we're both trying to find that VDHR reports for you all.
Today when I spoke, it was the 86 one was done for the bungalow. So remember when they did the interchange, they did a section 106 and did all the surveys. We had that with the Bean.
I was going to say, didn't we have that for their house?
Yeah, we did. So hopefully we can find that. That's just a good resource to document. And then it sounds like, Connor, you've already done some of this research, but there is a lot of background and history. The firehouse was a social hall. I used to hear stories about quite the parties that used to be on the upper level. If we do get a chance to go in, it would be interesting to see that it was a big open space on the first floor, on the second floor. When I talked about the Ladies Auxiliary did a fundraiser. You know, if we have some ability to collect or summarize some of those anecdotes, that would be interesting. The time capsule, we already talked about the signage and the pole signage, the siren, and then the pole thing for the siren are all in the museum. So it would be interesting to be able to incorporate that. We've already talked about the site visit. Emily, in your staff recommendations, we may have already covered this, but you talked about the use of design features in the new structure to pay homage. How did you see that working? Just through our review, future ARB review, or?
Through the new design review by the ARB.
Okay. Believe it or not, that's all I have for now. I appreciate it.
Is the board able to go ahead and set a time or request a time for site visit? Since Connor's here now, maybe we can go and discuss that.
You did say you had a conflict next month.
I do have a conflict for next month's meeting. I need to let you know now. I will not, I have to go to North Carolina.
That means I'm up.
It's not just to go to the beach. It is for some legitimate parental and house matters.
I guess it's generally afternoons that are better.
But up until that point, I do have a couple, I could, yeah.
Okay.
I just need to know, I just need to be able to have a few days ahead of time so I can block it out of my calendar for work to go. But I'm in town, I'm out of town on the 25th, but of this month. But in general, as long as I have
I'll do it.
notice.
And if it's easier, I'm happy to do one-on-ones, or I know we can do max 2 for FOIA purposes. If that works better for everybody's schedule, I'd be happy to accommodate to your all's schedule and make that happen. I know, obviously, we're fighting the sun a little bit with the 7 p.m. meeting. Obviously, 30 days from now, hopefully,
It'll
it's
set at 7:19 on March 16th.
She-
loving him.
I Googled it.
So I don't know if that means like a 6 p.m. start or whatever's comfortable
Yeah.
with your all schedules, or if you need to move the date to another date, we can accommodate accordingly.
And I could make myself available during the day so that I'm not the holdup if you want to have everybody else do it on the 16th. I work from home, so I could come during the day. We could set a time.
Why don't we do this if everyone's okay with it? Since we are down 2 members tonight, I will ask for Kim to reach out to everybody and include Connor on the email so that we can all coordinate a time that works for everyone. If we can come on one date, we'll get Connor to give us maybe 3 dates that work for you.
Every day works for me.
Every day works for you. Okay, we'll pitch out 3 dates that work for us to do the entirety of the board, and then if none of those dates work, we'll come back to doing pairs of 2 or single visits as necessary.
We think an hour is enough? Hour, half hour? 45 minutes? Not gonna get
I
lost.
wouldn't say more than an hour.
Yeah, we're not gonna get lost. Okay. So, Emily, or Madam Chair, going back to the, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, Sheridan, are you, you won't be at the meeting on the 16th, you'll be out the whole week? If we were to look at, I know our ideal situation for an application like this is to have the entirety of the board voting on it. Are you available the week right after that we could reschedule and really look to have the entirety of the board here? Or,
How about the 23rd?
Yes.
yeah. Would that
Which
work
is-
for you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Works for
I
me.
think it's important that, you know,
I
really.
don't disagree, yes, I'm
Yeah, I can join
I'm
virtually,
available
but
on
I
the
just
23rd.
physically won't be here.
I'm available on the 23rd to attend the meeting. We
Okay.
just have to figure out if the other 2 are available.
So we'll put this out to everybody. We will put the 23rd as one option for everybody to meet. We will also put one date the week prior, and we will put one date the first full week of March. So we'll give 3 dates in March for the site visit. But the meeting date will be the 23rd at 7 p.m.
So going back to the idea of collecting the materials, at one point there was some discussion of doing like one of the comp plan goals was to do a walking tour, a more succinct walking tour, and having sort of a collection of this data, the title searches, the relic information, we're able to put it all in one place, and then when we would go to someday put all that together, we have a quick reference with which to do it. So, Emily, if there's easy, if the board's okay with it, if there's easy data mining, I think there's some newspaper articles, even back in the Potomac News, which you found some of those periodicals, I imagine, online. If we're able to, if Emily's able to put together just a brief, what they can find, along with the relic stuff, that would be, I think, helpful for our documentation purposes.
I will also be encouraging the two members that were not here tonight to please watch the entirety of the meeting so that they can hear Connor's presentation and that discussion as well, so that they have it. If you don't mind, Connor, are you able to send the PowerPoint file?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and we'll also include that out. I'll send it out to the entirety of the board for everyone's review.
Are there any action items that, outside of sending you the PowerPoint, are there any questions or anything that the board would like me to get you all prior to your next meeting for your all's review?
Only I could think of, if you have any further thoughts on our discussion that you wish to put in some sort of response or anything like that, it's up to you.
Okay.
So, and we'd already talked about, you know, the photo documentation, which you said you're fine, opportunities to harvest materials, any other supporting documentation you feel is support your position, be helpful.
Excellent, folks. I greatly appreciate your time this evening. I know you all don't have the easiest job with having people come up, as I've served on that board before, and I know it's not fun all the time, but I greatly appreciate your all's sacrifice to the town and everything you all do.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to seeing
Thank
you
you.
all next
Thank you
time.
for your presentation. It was very good.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't forget all your cords.
Okay.
Our next item, old business. So, old business, we have the hotel is finalizing everything and will be opening here very shortly. Crossroads Village has started all of their grading work. They will be going to the building department here shortly with 2 of their structures. Robinson Village is currently at the building department receiving their permitting. They have laid foundations and they will be going to construction here very soon. And that's everything I have for old business, unless there's any questions on old business.
Emily, I brought this up. I know you're being asked to do a lot of things. Emily is our interim town manager, which I think most of you guys know. Signage for the building.
Signage for our building.
Yeah.
Yes, I am working on getting 2 signs designed, one for above the police department, one for above town hall, both in keeping with what our current branding looks like, but is something that's different enough to stand out. So we will be working on that. Also for our signage in general, just for an update, we are working on pricing out an update for our monument sign. Some of our individual placards on there for the businesses need to be replaced because they're just damaged and weathered. And we also have 1 or 2 businesses that are no longer here. So we will be working on those updates. I hope to have that designed to you guys for next meeting for discussion.
I know you got a lot on your plate. It's one of those things to do. And then I'd also talk to the council if we had money to be able to go ahead and put a new window. So you have the, shouldn't call it the outhouse, the outbuilding behind Cupcake Heaven. The one side of that just is boarded up. So if we have, I don't think we need to necessarily, it's had so many door styles on it, I don't know that we need to be overly ornate, just something utilitarian that can replace it. So I'll work with Emily on that. Maybe if we need to put an application together for that one. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. New business right now, we do not have any new business coming up in the near future that I am expecting. That could always change, but we don't currently have anything coming up that I know of. All right. Planning Commission update. We've not yet had our meeting this month. This is one of those unique times that it falls after your meeting. They are working on the comprehensive plan. survey. We plan to talk about that at our meeting, as well as the Robinson Paradise site plan, which that is actually new business that happened this week. It's been a busy time. Robinson Paradise will be coming to the Architectural Review Board for the review of the designs for their single-family homes. That's a development that sits just over the 66, just over the bridge, over top 66. And as you head north on Jefferson Street, it'll be there on your left. The road is called Walter Robinson Lane. So there will be about 16 homes that go back there. So they will be coming to us hopefully in March, but it could be April before they bring that. They'll bring a master plan through with several house designs, and then the board will look at all of those, and a combination of those designs will create the 16.
I saw something else, I'm sorry. Emily, do you need our help yet looking at the spa or the power yoga
Not yet.
landscape plan?
Nope, we're on a pause right now on that
Okay.
one.
Okay.
What I would like, jumping back to new business, I'm sorry for minute-taking purposes. Jumping back to new business, I'm sorry I forgot to mention this. I would like for the ARB to take back up the guidelines so that we can do our review and make sure that everything is as updated in the zoning ordinance, everything is aligned and referenced properly, and we can go ahead and move forward with that. And I'm
Thank you.
gonna look to Councilman Schneider as our liaison to help us guide that conversation and spearhead that.
So I did talk to Mr. Krim about it. Some folks had asked about the enforceability of it. A guideline is a guideline. It becomes the effective law when it becomes an ordinance. Right now, it's not an ordinance. It's a guideline, which means we use that to implement and evaluate our other criteria. So Mr. Krim gave some suggestions on how to amend the applications to, or amend the guidelines to give them a similar enforcement ability. So, fun stuff.
Would we do that in a meeting, or would we have like a working session, or?
My recommendation is we would start with a work session. We would give that document out, ask everybody to review it. We come to the work session, talk through anything, and then we would handle it that way.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
That's all I have. So now we're on to town council updates.
We've talked about this before. Emily's still the acting town manager. Jerry Shiro is offering support as a, what are we calling him, business manager? What is his official, consultant on call?
Consultant.
Consultant on call. We hired a social media person. Did I say that correctly?
No. Don't get me in trouble, Mr. Weir. We hired a part-time event coordinator.
Sorry, event coordinator. You saw it on the Facebook.
If Bob is listening, it was not social media.
Okay, it was on the Facebook, but Emily and the rest of the crew has done a wonderful job. If you've seen their highlighting businesses, they've been prioritizing.
Yes, I have.
This is once a week, and then we have the events coordinator that is on board, is helping really us promote. The hotel has a significant events budget as social media budget as well, and we're anticipating with, once the hotel opens, which is March, we know, end of March? Anticipated. Have gotten some tours of it. It's beautiful inside, got some great views of the town. But we're expecting, and they've already been booked, weddings, concerts at Jiffy Lube during the summer. They've already had quite the booking. So by default, we're probably, our name is going to show up in a lot more social media posts. And so having the event, Emily, please feel free to chime in, but having that event coordinator will certainly help us mesh with everything that we're doing, so that we're hopefully capitalizing, being most efficient with our resources. So
It's not my location tags when I do my Instagram stories on my morning walks. That's drawing people to town.
Maybe if you start doing reels when you do your walks.
That's very advanced.
Well, your photo company did pop up one night we were at a meeting, and I did see your photo company pop up. The Google. So, what else am I missing? We're trying to do a strategic planning session for the council, sort of see through the end of this term, which, as you know, was extended 6 months. With the budget's coming up, we're getting ready to go through the budget season, so we're looking at priorities for that. Looks like we're in a good situation. Him and Emily, did I say that correctly? We're in good standing. Oh, I'm sorry, the Starbucks application. So Starbucks was an SUP that was proposed down at Crossroads Village. The board did, or the council did deny that. There was recognition of the amount of work that they did to improve traffic circulation within the site. Ultimately, it came down to our ability to assess the traffic impact on traffic coming into town and trying to get in and out of the entirety of the property. And so at this time, we felt like it was not an appropriate use to have, and hopefully as more of these businesses open, we get a better handle on the traffic and we understand post-COVID environment, you know, if there's an opportunity to revisit those sorts of uses again. But I think the council shared the view, but with the number of drive-throughs that were already there, the peak hour, the number of trips, people trying to get in and out, coming eastbound into the town, backing up, trying to get into all these multiple fast food uses, the housing and the legal was considered significant. So, any questions on that decision?
No, plus I would think if that decision also supports just the support of our local businesses. So for example, Haymarket Coffee, if we're trying to help them grow and develop their business here, probably helps if there's not a Starbucks here.
Yeah. You know, there was some discussion, you know, those drive-throughs do generate quite a lot of cash, but what was brought up was that we don't have the ability to take that revenue and pour it back into the road network. We rely on VDOT to do that, so we're somewhat at, you know, either the developer making those or VDOT stepping in to make those improvements. So, you know, despite the revenue generating, I think there's some concern that we couldn't use that revenue efficiently, so, to address traffic. Anything else I'm missing? Dolores, welcome to the ARB. This isn't a record.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Second?
Oh, she seconded. Oh, you motioned to her. Second, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you made it and she seconded.
Yeah.
Second.
We are adjourned.
All right.
I'm being a guy.
You what?